I'm Joseph Murphy, and welcome to Alien Brain Fog, a science-based podcast focused on memory, identity, and the systems of oppression that affect them both. How do you know who you really are? Are you Canadian, American, Russian, Ukrainian, Israeli, Palestinian? Are you gay or straight, trans or cis? Are you black or are you white? Who are you and who gets to decide? And does deciding who you are change how people perceive you? Are you the person your parents think you are? Your neighbors? Can your husband decide who you are?
So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes.
Do you think women are the property of men?
No, the point I was making...
Why have you said they are?
Because I made a religious point.
The answer to all of these begins by looking at tribalism. What is it, and how does it affect your brain? It's an ontological crisis.
I don't even see color. Are aliens real?
Here's the agenda for today's podcast and what we'll learn. Oh, Jesus. I didn't write this out. We'll start by defining tribalism and how it affects your brain. Then we'll discuss how your brain organizes information, consciously and unconsciously. We'll discuss how our brains try to keep us alive, and we'll end with a discussion on unconscious bias.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
When I was a kid, Ronald Reagan was president. He was a former actor who was the textbook definition of conservative. Nowadays, he'd be labeled a snowflake. So was he right? If aliens showed up and posed a threat, would humans come together, or would we keep fighting each other? To understand tribalism, let's look at Americans and Canadians. Let's pretend that you're an American who doesn't like our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. So you cross the border into Windsor, Ontario, you find the first Canadian you can, and you kick him in the shins. Now, when the story is told, Canadians won't see that you, an individual, attacked another individual. They will see that an American attacked a Canadian. They will assign you to the tribe or group, American, and consider that you might be a threat to all of Canada. All of Canada will put their differences aside and be afraid of Americans. Canadians will be on guard the next time they see an American, because maybe this American is also dangerous, also hates Canadians, might also kick me in the shins because of what one individual did to another individual. So why are we like this? Tribalism. So what is tribalism?
But we are naive if we believe that tribalism, integral to our humanity since the dawn of our existence, has disappeared in today's civilized society. Every party, every community, every person has valid concerns, valid ideas, but we ignore this truth through tribalism. Red versus blue, left versus right, liberal versus conservative. Now, if you have an extreme belief, however ridiculous, you can find someone who thinks exactly the same way. You can find any opinion, and with our confirmation bias, that tendency to only look for information that'll support our thesis, why would you look for anything that would contradict it? Our tribalism drives us to believe that our convictions and ourselves are the same, so why would you contradict yourself?
When you are part of a tribe, you feel connected, like an extended family. When one of you is attacked, the rest of you feel attacked. That feeling is your brain trying to predict the future by analyzing events. Now, if Canadians perceive Americans as a threat, even if it's not supported by evidence, their brains will tell them to be careful the next time they see an American. Your brain will keep you on guard because it is trying to keep you alive. The more afraid you are, the more likely your brain will categorize something as a threat. And that's logical, as long as the threat is real. And herein lies the problem. Our brains are not impartial computers. Memories are not stored like photographs. So, how does the brain work? Let's take a look at how the brain organizes information.
You are your memories. Dr. Eric Kandel, who pioneered our understanding of the human brain. Whether or not we like it, our most memorable events go on to shape the people we become, what we go on to do, what we think, even what we're capable of understanding.
Working memory is that part of our consciousness that we are aware of at any given time of day. It's not something we can turn off. It allows us to store some immediate experiences and a little bit of knowledge. It allows us to reach back into our long-term memory and pull some of that in as we need it. And working memory allows us to investigate our current experience as we move forward. It allows us to make sense of the world around us. Okay? But it does have certain limits.
Your brain, like the rest of your body, is designed to keep you alive. Now, our lungs are responsible for taking in oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide. So what do our brains do? They help us predict the future. Our senses experience the world around them to the best of their ability. Our brains focus on the parts that are necessary to keep us alive and ignores the rest. If an American attacks a Canadian, the brains of Canadians will change once they hear the story. Their brain will know that they might need to be careful around Americans. Even if they're not conscious of it, that information will be at the back of their mind because your brain wants to keep you alive. How do our brains tell the difference between what is safe and what is dangerous? Through lived experience, through the stories we tell ourselves, and the stories we hear from others. We learn it.
How does consciousness happen? Let's start with experiences of the world around us and with the important idea of the brain as a prediction engine. Now imagine being a brain. You're locked inside a bony skull trying to figure what's out there in the world. There's no lights inside the skull, there's no sound either. All you've got to go on are streams of electrical impulses which are only indirectly related to things in the world, whatever they may be. So perception, figuring out what's there, has to be a process of informed guesswork in which the brain combines these sensory signals with its prior expectations or beliefs about the way the world is to form its best guess of what caused those signals.
We're social animals. There's no getting around it. We seek belonging. We seek out people who have shared values, shared understanding of how we grew up, shared experiences, and we create tribes because we're safer in tribes. What makes you love them and trust them is the shared values, the shared understanding, the shared vision.
Human beings are social animals. We belong in groups. We evolved in groups because historically we were safer in groups. We belong together. So why are we, the people, more divided than ever? Humanity is having an ontological crisis. The world, the real world, is not what we thought it was. We are not as rich as we thought we were. We are not as safe as we thought we were. And we are not as alone as we thought we were.
A report by the National Bank of Canada today suggests that the 1.2 million people who moved to Canada last year is more than the economy can handle. So tell us about this population trap.
If you run into a constraint where you can no longer increase your income per person because population is growing so fast that there's not enough savings in your economy to grow your capital stock, then you fall in a population trap. And that's normally the preserve of emerging economies. And unfortunately for Canada, it's the first time that we actually fall in a population trap in modern history.
If you've noticed more cars and trucks being stolen or break-ins in your neighborhood over the past year, you're not alone.
In far too many of our cities, we're seeing an uptick in violent crime. And there's all sorts of different factors that go into that.
There's a new video that is sending shockwaves throughout the UFO community. I don't know if you've seen this yet on your feeds or online. This footage was reportedly taken at a U.S. Joint Operations base in Iraq.
It's terrifying. And that fear is making humans act like rats in a cage. When we are afraid, we are more likely to perceive other people as a threat, especially if that person is different than us. Your brain will tell you to trust your own tribe and distrust the outsider. That sounds logical, but it's also the foundation of racism. How can you tell if the threat your brain perceives is real? If you see a snake, your brain will immediately say, danger. You have to stop and take a closer look at the snake.
In this video, we are going to look at one of the most consistent and common questions that comes our way. Is this rattlesnake a Mojave or a Western Diamondback? And how do you tell the difference between these two very similar looking rattlesnakes?
Upon first sight, snakes are dangerous. Fear is a physical response to a perceived threat. Upon seeing the perceived threat, your brain will try to predict the future. Your brain will stop working, apparently. Jesus. Upon seeing the perceived threat, your brain will attempt to predict the future by comparing current events to past events. This is what women mean when they say, all men. Women can't tell just by looking at a man if he is safe to be around, because the evidence of their entire lives and all of recorded history says the number one threat to women is a man having a bad day. But I'll move on. When you meet a person, your brain works quickly to identify if the person is a threat. Now, that action is rarely conscious. The more afraid your brain tells you to be, the less logical you become. Now, fear can override your logic brain, which makes sense. If you wake up and find a snake in your bed, now is not the time to wonder if it's friendly. Your brain relies on what it has seen and experienced before. If you live in a small town, it's possible you've never met a black person in real life. Seriously, it still happens. If you've never met a black person, the only memories you can rely on are those of other people, or what you've read about, what you've seen on TV, and what your friends have told you. Now, if all of your friends have said black people are dangerous, your brain will tell you that black people are dangerous. Maybe you clutch your purse a little tighter because you've heard that black people are thieves. Maybe you let out a yelp when you see a black person in a normally white space. This used to happen to me all the time, followed by a quick, oh, sorry, Joe, didn't know it was you. Because for a split second, their brain had categorized me as black and dangerous. Changing which category I was in took a conscious effort from the other person. When we are stressed or afraid, we are less likely to reassess that risk. If our brain says it's dangerous, we agree and we don't think too much about it. Now, let's talk about unconscious bias. New research in neuroscience strongly suggests that humans might not have free will.
Our choices define us, but reality may not be so simple. Most of us would assume that our choices register as an increase in brain activity, but what's actually observed is a build-up of brain activity, called the readiness potential, a full second earlier than the conscious urge. This has been replicated hundreds of times.
Now I know that was complex. That's what I'm here for, to turn that into regular English. Your brain is faster than conscious thought, and there is a gap between when your unconscious mind makes a decision and your conscious mind is aware of that decision. And in that gap is unconscious bias. To put that differently, if you are unaware of your unconscious bias, it's possible that all of your decisions are unconscious. Our brains are not like computers, but they are influenced by programming. We teach our children how to act, how to dress, what to eat and what not to eat. By teaching children of the perceived dangers in the world, we hope to keep them alive. When a Canadian mother points at an American and tells their child, stay away from those people, the child's brain will take that into programming. Each time the child sees an American, they will perceive danger faster than they are consciously aware of it. In the same way, if you are born with pale skin and align yourself with whiteness, either consciously or unconsciously, When one white person is attacked, you will feel like you are attacked. If one white person loses a job and that job is given to a black man, you will perceive a possibility that the same thing might happen to you. If you have darker skin and society has labeled you as black, when one black person is assaulted by a police officer, you will worry that maybe one day you too could be assaulted by a police officer.
I'm not sure the words have been invented to describe what it's like to be black in America.
I'll tell you this. When I left this country in 1948, I left this country for one reason only, one reason. I didn't care where I went. I might have gone to Hong Kong, I might have gone to Timbuktu, I ended up in Paris, on the streets of Paris, with $40 in my pocket on the theory that nothing worse could happen to me there than had already happened to me here. You talk about making it as a writer by yourself. You have to be able then to turn off all the antenna with which you live, because once you turn your back on this society, you may die. You may die. And it's very hard to sit at a typewriter and concentrate on that if you're afraid of the world around you.
Like thinking about just situations that I've been involved in terms of police, and like how I'm very thankful that it didn't go the way that, you know, Sandra Bland's went, or Alton Sterling, Eric Gardner, you know, Oscar Grant. I think about these people and how it didn't end up that way, where it embedded in me that I'm not safe because of my skin color.
The years I lived in Paris did one thing for me. They released me from that particular social terror, which was not the paranoia of my own mind, but a real social danger visible in the face of every cop, every boss, everybody. I don't know what most white people in this country feel. I can only conclude what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, that the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians, and certainly cannot trust the Christian church.
They think they can keep getting away with this because they are getting away with it. You're inhumane.
I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks I give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
Where is your empathy? Where is your sympathy? Where are those human qualities? You have no connection to be able to do that to someone so quickly. They are inhumane. I don't even consider they're not humans anymore as far as I'm concerned. Those are the ones who are not human.
A pluribus unum, from many, one. It comes from the Latin of an ancient idea described by Pythagoras, that the origin of society is a social bond. One idea, that when one loves the other as much as himself, unus fiat ex pluribus, it makes one out of many.
Once upon a time, everyone in your church was family. Everyone in your community was a neighbor. And everyone in your country was a potential friend. Now, no one trusts the church, no one talks to their neighbor, and our country is more divided than ever. No one feels safe anymore because we are perceiving each new person as a potential threat.
I'm afraid of Americans.
We have been conditioned to believe that we are safer with people like us and that people who are not like us are dangerous. The fancy name for this is xenophobia. Historically, being xenophobic might keep you alive because society has been deeply racist for a long time. Sometimes that fear is logical. We're watching an example of it right now.
I decided to talk a little bit about what some people may not understand about what your Jewish friends are experiencing. I've long said that there are certain people for whom it doesn't matter that I have supported a Palestinian state, that I have spoken out against injustice, persecution, and suffering of the Palestinian people. And when I would tell people that it didn't matter, they would look at me like, you're paranoid. You're just paranoid.
The level of anti-Semitism, the level of Jew hatred being seen in Australia is off the charts. It's sickening. And we all know about the graffiti vandalism at Jewish businesses, at Jewish organisations, and even at the offices of politicians who are Jewish or support Israel in any way.
Well, I think that I was right.
The silence in defence of Jewish people is chilling. And if you're silent, you're complicit. Have a look at this ad from the US.
Let's go, Mom. We're going to be late. Hi, Mr. Tony. Mom, what's that?
Nothing. Just get in the car. Let's go.
Who did that?
Come on. Right now. In. Get in. Right now. Let's go.
Did you paint it or something?
Move it. Seatbelt on. Right now. Put your seatbelt on.
Hi, Mr. Tony.
Yeah, be that bloke. Stand by your Jewish neighbours now and any other groups targeted with bigotry anytime.
There are certain people for whom it does not matter if you are left-wing or right-wing. There is a strain of anti-Semitism that is alive and well.
Jewish people all around the world are being blamed for the actions of the Israeli government. People living in fear have succumbed to tribalism. They have removed Jewish people from the category of neighbor and put them in the category of other. Think logically. What does a housewife in Australia have to do with the military decisions of a foreign country? Now, the only thing they share in common is a religion that they might not actually even practice. Why are you making their religion the most important category and not the country that they live in? Because your brain has decided that the Jewish religion is dangerous. Not the person's gender, not their location, not their political views, just their religion. Now, go sit with that thought and think about why you believe that. Human beings are more than the country that they live in or the religion that they practice. Human beings are more than the tribes that they belong to, because there is only one tribe, one race, the human race.
What if an alien came down, gave you a mic and said for the next 60 seconds, whatever you say?
Stop fighting. All of us are running around like children. Like our parent has left the room or the babysitter has stepped out. We're children causing chaos because our parent isn't around. Who's our parent? God. In the West, we've treated God like a parent because we got used to the church acting like a parent. For a very, very long time, the church told us what to do and we obeyed. But we don't believe the church anymore.
The 2-year investigation lays out in graphic detail allegations against more than 300 priests, involving more than 1,000 children. The backbone of the investigation, the church's own records, documenting, prosecutors say, the systematic cover-up.
Above all else, they protected their institution at all cost.
For more than a century, the children of Canadian Native communities, including what's known as the First Nations, were taken from their families and sent to Christian boarding schools run for the government, about 70% of them run by the Catholic Church. After the discovery of these graves over the last 6 weeks, Indigenous leaders have demanded an investigation into what they call a crime against humanity.
This is a shocking claim.
allegation that the Vatican might have known about non-human intelligence on Earth. So,
for various reasons. And because we don't trust the church, we don't trust God. And because we don't trust God, we think we can do whatever we want. Children, someone has to say this, so I guess it will be me. I don't care who started it. Stop. I don't care who threw the first punch. Don't throw another one. Fighting is wrong. Now, this is something that we teach our children, right? They have to know that in kindergarten. Children are taught this, but adults have forgot it. So, a reminder, I don't care who you're fighting with right now. Stop. Stop acting like children and grow up. Rioting in the streets because you've been told you have to do something you don't want to do is the same thing as a child throwing a temper tantrum because they've been told to take a nap. Now, rioting in the streets because you're upset with late-stage capitalism, that's a different topic. But for that, we all need to come together. And there are forces in the world that are trying to separate us. So in case you have forgotten, there is one race, the human race. There are forces that want to divide us. It is time for the human race to come together and look at the people that are separating us. Because the people that are trying to separate us, they are the enemy. And we need to come together to get them out of power. I almost forgot the most important thing. Because there is a non-zero chance that aliens are real. Really, they might exist. And it's very possible that they are just waiting for us to grow up before they come help us.
I said, how is that moving at those speeds and then straight up against gravity? This is the alternative energy and propulsion systems. You know, we have our planet. Half the planet's population doesn't have indoor plumbing. 3 billion people have no way to cook their food. We need to take care of our creation, the Earth, and our future, and it isn't going to happen with a windmill and a solar panel. When these technologies have existed, now this same corrupt organization, because it doesn't just deal with one issue, have been responsible for basically hoovering up, vacuuming up all these technologies for 100 years. I know people personally who have been murdered because they had one.
Because if aliens are real, they have the technology to save us. They have the technology to end poverty. But they're not going to do it until we grow up. Join me next time on Alien Brain Fog when we take a look at the difference between science and magic. What is the scientific method, and how can we use it to determine if something is real? Then we'll look at magic, the real stuff, not the stuff in Hollywood. Can something be true simply because you believe it to be true? If your church disagrees with established science, how can you determine which one is right? And is the power of positive thought real, or are you crazy for believing in that? We'll end by looking at experts. What is an expert, and how can you tell if you're talking to one? I'm Joseph Murphy, and thank you for joining me. Be kind. The world's a little messed up right now.